Welcome to the fifth section of our course. In this section, we will learn how to use pods for monitoring and storage. So firstly, we'll take a look at the ways of defining pod with pod manifest. Then we'll be running and monitoring specific pod. Video number 3 will be about monitoring health of pods with health check. Finally, we will learn how to persist pods data. This is the first video in which we'll be defining pod with pod manifest. So at first, we will answer the question, what is a pod manifest? Then we'll be using pod manifest to create a pod, and we'll be comparing Docker file to pod manifest. So let's go to code. One of the simplest ways of defining simple pod. So every pod needs to have an API version. This is for managing backward compatibility. We need to specify kind of this specific pod. Right now it will be a simple pod, but in the subsequent sections, we'll learn about more advanced one, for example, replica set. Then we are doing metadata. As you remember, every pod should have name. Then when it has a name, it is easier to debug and find that specific instance. And finally, every pod needs to have a specification of containers. So here in this section, we need to pass an image that will be used to create our container managed by Kubernetes. But this is a Docker image. So it could be used by Kubernetes, but also it can be used by a normal raw Docker command line. We are giving it a name and specific properties that are tied to this Docker image. So for example, container port, name and protocol that could be used to access this specific container that will be created from the image that we supplied by the image parameter. So once we have that pod, we have two ways of creating new instance out of the Docker image. First one is, as we learn about it as well, one of the previous sections, is to just run Docker. So Docker run, we can give it a name as a quart and publish on the 8080 port. So it will expose the internal port 8080 as an external 8080 and we'll be able to access that using our browser. Finally, we need to pass a Docker file, so definition that will be used to create the image. So we can do it. You can see that Docker already has it. So let's remove the container. But before removing, we need to stop it. So we are stopping our container. We are removing it, and once we have that, we are ready to create a new one. So you can see that new container with that identifier was created, and Docker is managing that. But it has limitations because we are not leveraging Kubernetes architecture and all things that are built in concerning management of containers. So there is another way to start your Kubernetes Docker image using pod definition that we just created. So how to do it? Using command line is simple. So we are using kubectl run name of it and we are passing image, but it will be managed right now by the Kubernetes deployment. And you can see that your container is present here. Also, of course, you can remove your container at the end. But let's take a look at the different way of creating. So different way of creating is create pod using YAML. So here we are using quart pod that we created and passing it using apply. After some time, there will be creation. But you can see that this is already created. So we need to give it a different name because we created it using command line, of course. So let's give it a name called pod2 and create it. Right now, quart2 is created and let's do some simple debugging commands. So of course we can get all pods and you can see that both of those are returned here and at the end you can just delete it using command line or you can delete it using YAML file.